My name's NBZ, and welcome to Game Psych. Today is an incredibly Scottish day. The weather outside is abysmal, as one would expect, but it probably also means that the lighting on my face and everything is not particularly great. So if you would like to blame anyone, please blame Scotland. So our first story for this week is E3, now open to the general public. There will be an allotment of 15,000 tickets available for the general public, the early bird of which I believe 1,000 will be sold for $150, and then the rest will be $250. And this will be for the duration of E3, all 3 days, I believe, of the show floor opening, so anyone can now go. Now this is really interesting because E3 has always had a sense of wonder and an aura surrounding it. It's the kind of show that, you know, only the press are allowed to go to, and even though if you're smart and kind of waggle your way around and kind of hobnob a bit, you can probably get in there even if you're kind of like sub-media. Even if you have a blog, you know, you can probably find a way in. But it is one of those shows where generally no one can just walk in and be like, hey, I want to go to this if I paid money. And now they're kind of changing the face of E3. And a lot of people have come back at this, and especially media, because guess what? They're the people doing their jobs at E3 saying, oh great, this is just going to make my job harder. I'm going to have to wade through these thousands of people to get to my appointments that are the things that everyone is worried about. And E3 generally, people say, is a mess to cover. It is a nightmare, and it is you know, just a thing that is difficult. But ultimately, this is what E3 needs to do, I think. There is this problem that it has had in the past couple of years where companies are dropping out and they're doing their own thing. EA had their own thing last year. Nintendo for years have been just doing weird stuff. They're still on the show floor, but you know, there's this diminishing sense that companies are leaving their floor space, not necessarily thinking they need it anymore, and deciding that they can kind of speak directly to their fans through different events and different opportunities. So E3 and the way it makes money and the way that they are able to you know, expand and do stuff has kind of been going in a different direction, because it originally starts out as a trade show, right? So it's for retailers to know what's coming out in the winter so they can buy stock and get everything sorted, and so it's this kind of conversation. But over the years it has turned into a consumer thing, and it's especially the press conferences that have done that, because they're these big pomp and circumstance. They're announcing crazy new games that everyone wants to see, and essentially E3 and the press conferences are kind of divergent from one another. They're not necessarily connected, because most of the news just happens on that first couple of days, and then the rest of it is, hey, people go to the show floor and play stuff. But I don't know how valuable it is these days, especially when you have things like Treehouse Live, where the company is talking directly to its audience and the media not necessarily, I don't know, gaining that much from it. It just seems like there's an irrelevance happening to the media at the same time as, you know, these YouTube and Twitch things start bringing up. It's just an identity crisis, I think. And I feel E3 just letting fans in and letting them have a go and go to all these games is cool. It is also a thing that I'm not sure how many people are going to get a lot out of, because even last year there was like 6 to 7 hour lines for Breath of the Wild, and that's at a show where only the press are allowed. So can you imagine if like 15,000 fans are in there as well? You're not going to be able to play that many games. So on the one hand, I think that it's a good step. They're in the right direction, like changing the focus of the show, but they also need to realize that the nature of the show itself needs to change, and they either need to expand it to make it more palatable for more people to be there, or just structurally throw it in the air and change it about. So I hope they get on that in future years, but for now it's a cool piece of news, and man, if I was able to, I'd probably go. So yeah, good job. Sometimes the news cycle really helps when you're doing a show like this, because today, Sunday, when I'm recording this and when this video is going up, Nintendo announced that Splatoon 2 is going to have a global Testfire, which before, when Splatoon 1 came out, was essentially a beta. It was split into kind of hour-long chunks so that they could stress their servers. They're like, okay, everyone come on at this hour, so the entire world just piles on their servers and they can see the load, which makes sense. It's a way for them to kind of hope that Switch is working and all the online stuff is functioning. But the big deal about this is it's happening in the month of March, in the launch month of Switch. Now, this isn't going to sway anyone on thinking the Switch is doomed or anything. You know, if people think that the lineup is bad and they're not a big fan of it, that's fine. But I think this is a great opportunity, especially in Japan, for them to push Switch units earlier than people might have necessarily gone out and bought them. Splatoon is a huge deal in Japan. It is an IP that has done incredibly well for it, number one, being a shooter, being basically mostly online based, and for it to be a brand new IP that no one has ever heard of, to do that successfully is kind of crazy. People love it. It is the number one thing that Japanese players have said they want from the Switch. So having this kind of weekend where anyone can try it out is a thing where some people will be like, I'm just going to buy the Switch to play Splatoon 2 early, because that's how much the Japanese market cares about it, which is really cool. And it's also great to kind of give us a taste of online before Mario Kart has come out and before all these tentpole titles are here. So I think it's a really smart move by them. It allows us to try out some of the new weapons. They said the Splat Dualies are going to be in there, and maybe a couple new maps, which is really nice. And it also allows people to not get burned out, right? Because I think a lot of the time what can happen with betas is if it's running for a whole weekend, people just go heavy on it and burn out. And I think that's been happening with For Honor, which the beta is on this weekend, and I played a decent amount of it, and I'm like, kind of don't really need to play the game anymore, right? But where they're doing this in hour chunks, like across a period of time, you get that quick hit, and then you're like, oh, I'm in again, I want to come back. So really cool news. I'm looking forward to Splatoon 2 and hope that it does enough to differentiate itself from the first one, because I think my one worry is, like, it looks very similar right now, and I hope that it does a lot of different things. So we'll see, and yeah, global Testfire. And now time for the news that left everyone going, what? Castlevania is coming to Netflix? So it was confirmed at a Netflix event where they're announcing their upcoming slate of shows that there is a Castlevania show happening this year on Netflix. That's really weird, but also it's not weird at all if you're talking about Konami and you're talking about money. So here's the thing. Konami doing a shit show right now. They just released this thing with fucking Bomber Girl, which is this eroticized Bomberman thing with pachinko and whatever the fuck. Look, it's a mess, alright? Konami, you're a fucking mess. Everyone hates you, nobody likes you, and yet there are still going to be all these people buying Bomberman on Switch Day 1. Just, you know, people forget things easily, right? You know, the fuck Konami thing lasted for a while, but people are still going to buy it. In any case, what do you do if you're Konami and you're sitting on all these IP and you want to make money? Well, guess what? You go to someone like Netflix and you're like, hey, we're going to license this to you and you can make a TV show that's probably going to be decent because it's Netflix, right? And this is where we need to temper our expectations, right? Because I think Netflix have done a great job of curating and creating shows that are their own and part of their own content schedule, and for the most part they've been hits. Like, a lot of them have done very well. So there's a chance that this actually turns out to be one of the best video game adaptations outside of a video game. We know that films do so terribly, and TV shows, like, there haven't really been any, aside from, like, cartoons in the past, right? So I do wonder how they approach this. Is it live action? Is it a cartoon? Because that could be an interesting take on it as well. And I'm just very curious how this does. It's one of those things that I'll definitely watch, you know? I'll give it a chance because you know, I'm a fan of what Netflix does on the TV side. I think they have a great slate of original programming, and if this is handled well and done correctly, it could be good. So as much as everyone would love Konami to actually fucking, you know, license out their IP to, say, Nintendo to make a Castlevania game, I do think that there is something to be gleaned here, something of value. So, despite it not necessarily being a video game related thing, it is a video game related thing, and I'm curious about it, and I hope it's good. I really do, because despite everyone saying fuck Konami, they have IPs that are valuable and people care about. So, we don't want those devalued any more than they have been. And that is it for Game Take this week. Let me know what you thought of all these stories down below, and I will be back next time with some more video games. Video games. Goodbye, everyone.